Everybody, welcome to What's on Repeat.
Hmm.
Pretty late this time, but I can hear again. I had two. There's still, it's not 100% clear, but I had two ear infections, but I can hear again.
That's
And
good.
I'm miserable. And I had a lot of albums to catch up with. But I'll be honest, Josh knows this. I think the first album that I caught up with ended up being the third album we're going to talk about for my list. And then I was like, okay, well, my list is done, but I need to start catching up now. So I have a couple albums to catch up with, but I'm still good. This is Joshua Kirk,
Hi.
my cohort, my partner in crime as usual.
Yep.
Um, April to July. I know when we first started the year off, we were pretty excited. I think this year started off pretty good. I think it's getting better. I think we got a lot of really great albums. And honestly, just looking at his list too, I think he probably could have changed out some of his. I could have changed out some of mine. Luckily, we mostly know all the albums too. There's one album on his list I haven't listened to, and I'll explain why. It's not a laziness or like I just don't want to listen to it. I have a whole thing about it that I need
Yeah.
to tell. But obviously, as you know, singles, albums. Josh ended up asking if we could do just one single each, which was perfectly fine with me. Because I don't even remember what my second single was, speaking of. So it's a good thing. So my one single is it's the simp pick. It's like when you get someone and they have their favorite band of all time and they're not a thing anymore. And then all of a sudden they come back 6 years later and then they're doing a whole tour, which by the time this video's up, I am seeing them this week. It'll be Thursday. So if this video is either up Monday or Tuesday, so whatever, time is crazy, right? But it is a pop punk band known by Yellow Card, and the song is Childhood Eyes, and it's the one single off their new EP that they're coming up with, which is the same title. It's going to be out July 21st. I was very nervous because for a lot of the bands I really like that have come back, it's sort of like a hit or miss. So like My Chemical Romance comes back. I love that Foundations of Decay song. Blink 182 gets Tom back, or even Blink 182 coming back after, yeah. So I was like, Yellow Card has always been consistent to me. I know they're definitely a band that most people only know for like the Ocean Avenue album and have their own opinions on. I really love their sound. I think it's great. I think the songwriting is good. It's very poppy pop punk. It's not, we always have this discussion on this channel of like the different kinds of pop punk, like the Warped Tour stuff. We have like the Jeff Rosenstock Pup area pop punk. We have like
And
different.
Jeff's dropping a new album later this year.
Jeff's
Heck
dropping a new
yeah.
album, so that's exciting. So it's like different kinds of pop punk we like to talk about. Knuckle Puck is definitely kind of in that conversation for me.
Yeah.
I like them a lot.
There
Yellow
is
Card,
actually one. There is one album from Yellow Card I have listened to, Southern Air, because I remember ARTV reviewing that like more than 10 years ago. And yeah, I was like, I mean, can't say, it was really my thing, but I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, the fact that like they're a pop punk band with like they have like a violinist as one of their core members, which is kind of cool and unique. Yeah.
Yeah, Southern Air, I do agree. I really like Southern Air. I'm pretty sure it ended up being my album of the year that year. There are songs on there that I'm not a big fan of because they're definitely like kind of poppy, like pop. Like I'm like, no, just make what you're known for, like, or don't go in that direction.
And they have moments where they kind of went in a slightly more aggressive direction with some songs too. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're very much known, like their discography is very eclectic. And so when they broke up in 2016, I saw them on that tour. I was very happy because I think a lot of times when a band or an artist we love is done, no matter who they are, no matter if you like them or not, you always want their last album to be like, let's end good. And I think Yellow Card ended on a good note. And Ryan Key, who is their singer, he's been doing a lot of solo work, which I really liked. His two first EPs, I thought they were really good. I haven't really liked a lot of his electronic stuff he's done with Ryan Mendez, who is the guitarist of Yellow Card and a Michigan native. So that stuff I haven't liked, but they announced they were going to do all of Ocean Avenue at Riot Fest, I went, I mean, if My Chemical Romance is coming back, which we're waiting on that album whenever, if that's ever going to happen. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. And the fact that My Chemical Romance comes back, they give us a song, a whole tour, nothing. We got Blink-182, a new song, a whole tour. Oh, an album's coming, nothing. Yellow Card comes back, does all this, and we're already going to get a brand new EP with 5 new songs within the next 2 weeks. So they beat both of them to the punch for me. But this song, it's basically just Yellow Card but grown up. It has a more like, what's funny, this kind of reminds me of an album that you're going to be talking about. It feels like an older rock band where like they're still doing that pop punk sound where it's big, it's anthemic, it has kind of certain trappings and stereotypes of songs like that, but it just sounds more kind of like an older alt rock band. Like it has like a really good sound to it. I think the jam is great. I love the end breakdown. It's a very unique ending to a song for me. Like I thought the ending is actually kind of unique. Brian sounds great. Again, the band sounds as great as ever. Like you said, the violin, Sean is an awesome violinist, so that adds so much to it. And it sounds good. It's well produced. It's definitely pop punky produced though, where it's like it's very kind of punchy and like it hits very hard, but it doesn't sound overproduced. Like it actually sounds like a well mixed.
Yeah, it's not like MGK or something like that.
Oh no, it has more passion and soul and like uniqueness to it for sure. But really, this song just makes me so happy. It's probably going to be my favorite song of the year. Spoiler. So if you're watching this, you'll know end of the year. It's just one of those songs where every time I listen to it, I just get so happy because I'm like, this could be a whole conversation of just like how we feel. But I know like it seems like 6 years is kind of the staple for time where bands kind of are done and they come back. Because I know LCD Sound System did the same thing, and I know a lot of people were divided when they came back with that album. So it's like it's nice when you get something that you love, they come back, and then you're able to kind of sit back and go, okay, it's good. It's good. It doesn't feel bad. But the fact this EP is coming out, it makes me now go, okay, cool. The EP is awesome. We're getting a tour. I'm so excited to see them. Does this mean the next step? Like, is this like, are we back? Like, is it good? We'll see. For now, I'm getting an EP from them. That's all I need for now.
Right.
Songs, love it. Awesome. So very excited.
Yeah, well, my first single, yeah. I mean, you're pretty much, well, yeah, it's cool. We're kind of in our on our own territories, I feel like, with our singles, because mine is this is from a country singer-songwriter that I feel like I've been talking about them quite a bit lately, and this song dropped, and yeah, it just so happened to be like when I was putting my list together and was thinking about singles, I'm like, yeah, I pretty much knew it really couldn't be any other song. But the song is from an artist known as Adeem the Artist, and their new song is called I See You. Adeem I first got into with their 2021 album, Cast Iron Pansexual, an album that at the time I was pretty intrigued by what they were doing, if not like blown away by it. But listening to it again this year, it did grow on me. Like, and I think hearing that title, you pretty much know right out of the gate what their whole like thing is. They're a non-binary and pansexual, and have been pretty like out about their identity. Because there's an interesting kind of like sort of scene of country artists that are kind of the LGBT community. I mean like Orville Peck, for example.
I was gonna just say that's who I thought of when you started talking about Adeem. I was like, yep, that's who I'm thinking.
Yeah. and then their current album is White Trash Revelry, which came out late last year, and yeah, that album certainly is getting them quite a bit of buzz, like for more kind of underground country music. And this song, I think could have very easily fit on that album, because you know and great record, by the way. I actually recently did a review for it. This song I think could have very easily fit on that album, because the instrumentation sounds very organic, it's pretty much free of any of the overproduced crap you would probably hear on the radio and stuff like that. It's I mean, because the piano, the pedal steel, and the mandolin, it all sounds really gorgeous. And lyrically, the song seems to be kind of about a person who a young lives in this Christian household and in Southern America. And it's clear that although yeah, who they really are is not really mentioned in the song, it is clear that they're someone who is really struggling to belong because of how different they are, and stuff like that. And the song is basically a Dean being I mean, there's not much I can do for you, but but I do have this song, and hopefully it'll make you feel a little better about yourself. He even I like how they even say in the song I have, I've never been there, I don't fully understand what you're going through, but um you know but I do declare that you are good. And so I feel like this is kind of an overused term to describe them a little bit, but just how empathetic he is, they are they're not cynical, they have a heart. And you can hear that on the songs of theirs that are kind of more about their identity, or or and even in the songs where they're pretty uh where they do express pretty upfront progressive politics, even in those songs, it's just these sentiments are basically kind of, they're clearly built out of just someone with a big heart. And yeah, I think, dare I say it, so far this may be my favorite song of the year so far, because I just feel regardless who you are, and even if you can't fully wrap your head around maybe is their politics or anything like that, you could you I feel anyone could really relate to this song, because that's the thing when you're kind of when you're a bit of an outlier, and you're not like other people. Yeah, it can definitely, it can be really gut wrenching to really kind of be yourself in a communities, in a because clearly this person has a kind of conservative upbringing, and stuff like that. But yeah, just so yeah, if you're out there and you're so if you're out there and you're really struggling to belong, give the song a listen, and yeah, maybe it'll make you feel, yeah, maybe it'll kind of give you more hope in a way, is what I'm saying. So there you go.
That's a beautiful sentiment, and that's awesome that you said that about that song too, because then this is an important what's on repeat, because our two songs we're talking about are our two favorites of the year so far. That's awesome. Yeah. But that's not that's just the appetizer, the meat of the episodes. Yep. Our albums. So what are the three albums? I see you're teasing one of them right now.
Yeah,
just a little bit. Yep. On your shirt, this area. Is that the first one we're going to talk about?
Yeah, it of course is. And yep, as that video I just put out on YouTube, like made pretty clear this is like my top album of the year so far. And yeah, I'm just, not gonna waste some more time. Just gonna say what it is. Boy Genius, the record. So Boy Genius, for those not familiar, which if you're not familiar, I don't know what kind of rock you're living under, but whatever. Indie rock supergroup of Julian Baker, Phoebe Bridgers, and Lucy Dacus, who are like, I feel like three of the biggest stars like coming out of that whole like indie like singer-songwriter like women kind of like little like circuit. We've definitely talked about at least two of them quite a bit on here because of like their recent solo albums, and also they've even put out a couple Lucy singles last year. One of them wound up on my favorite top 50 songs of last year. But so Julian Baker is really the only one out of them we haven't talked about, but her latest album, I will say, even though I thought it was good, for whatever reason, that album just didn't really click with me in the same way like Punisher and Home Video did. But the last time these three were on a full project together was the self-titled EP from 2018. You haven't heard it, I have, and I was aware of the buzz it was getting at the time of release, but like it wasn't until I got more into Phoebe Bridgers during COVID that I was like, okay, I've heard of this collaboration they've done. Now I want to hear it. And I loved it. I thought, it definitely, I felt open a lot of doors, not just for like them as solo artists, but also like, obviously them as like, a trio in a way. Like it was pretty apparent that they worked together well as a group. Yeah, but I definitely came away from that EP being like, this is really good, but I feel like, they can do something even better. Now, there's been some interesting opinions I've seen for this album because I feel like there's three kinds of people with this album. Ones that I think, like it, but don't necessarily think it's as like strong as the EP. Some people seem to have been a little
I
bit.
haven't listened to the EP, but I agree with that first sentiment. I agreed up until the first EP part.
Yeah, yeah. All right. And then there are those people who were maybe a little bit let down by the final product. But it seems the majority is on my side, where they're like, bruh, this album is incredible. Like, because I think what they've done so well on this album is they've kind of approached each song like, okay, we're three songwriters at our highest peaks right now. We're doing our first project together. We're doing our first project together like in a few years. We have all these ideas. So let's take those ideas and like build songs out of them and in a way kind of improve as like songwriters, singers, and in a way like people in the process. Like Cool About It, I think is a great example of it because like each verse on this track, the way they so like seamlessly go into one another and just they're singing on it. I think it's really a great song in terms of like how it shows how like kind of unique their voices are because you have Julian who's like kind of sort of the got the most, I feel like, kind of intensity to her voice. Then you have Lucy who's like kind of seems to be like projecting as a singer the most. And then you have Phoebe who's like a little more like faint and kind of subtle, but yet so like they're kind of they have their like common sort of things about them, but they're still like they have their own kind of different styles, and yet hearing all three of them together on a song, like they still like they come together really well. Or like which is why the song Not Strong Enough, which I'd say is probably my favorite track on here, is um like every verse on this track is so well written, and like it's catchy, I think it sounds really good. They're definitely going for a little more poppy aesthetic, it seems, on this song, which is kind of why at first I was kind of like, I don't know about this. But like the more I sat with it, like even before hearing the full album, the more I listened to this song, I was like, okay, um, now I can vibe with this, because out of all these singles, this is the one that like feels the most transcendent of like their greatest strengths. And yeah, just like their vocal performances on this track, like yeah, oh my god, so good. And like I'd say like especially after hearing this song live, I'm like, yeah, this is easily, like, in my opinion, like the crown jewel of this album. And the fact that it's like midway through the album as like the centerpiece is like perfect. Now, as you pointed out about this album, the album, as you pointed out about this album, majority of this record is like a lot of kind of like slower, kind of like melancholic songs. I think especially that applies to like the more Phoebe centric songs on here, which I mean, we're kind of used to that coming.
Yeah.
That's kind of her thing in a way, because like even though like Punisher definitely has a little more of a punch to it than like say like her like debut album, like you look at a song like Emily, I'm Sorry, and like the fact that she's able to make such a like moving, powerful song, but doing it in a way that like doesn't hit you over the head. That's like kind of like you know the more it's kind of like it's like kind of quiet, but also like kind of a case of like quiet being loud at the same time. um but like for something a little more in your face, there's $20 early on in the album, which has a great energy to it. I love the lyrics on it, and Phoebe lets out a little scream near the end, so what's not to love?
You love when
um
she screams.
oh yeah, yeah, and that song, yep, you get just that. But then there's Satanist later on the album, which I was
That's a
like,
jam.
oh yeah, like definitely. This song is so funny to me, like it feels like just such a flex on those people that kind of look at them and be like, are you guys like depressed all the time? And they're like, fuck off. Like we definitely, I mean, we definitely most of the time love to sing and write sad songs, but like but like we also just love to just kick ass and have fun too. Because this song has like this kind of like old school like pop punk alternative rock sort of sound, which it kind of reminds me of like maybe Paramore a little bit, not like their new album, more like
Yeah.
what they when they were
Misery
more in that,
business kind of era.
and they
Yeah.
were when they were in that Warp Tour kind of vein, something
Hmm.
like that. And yeah, I love it. And then like those last three songs are like some of the most just emotionally like impactful on the whole album. Like We're in Love, like screw you, Lucy. This track like almost made me cry. Like just it's such a like touching song coming from her, because like it's basically her singing to like her bandmates about like how much they mean to her, and like how they have like each other's back, no matter how messy things can get. sometimes, and like it doesn't shock me that I think I may have heard NPR mention that, like, when Lucy first like played this song like for her bandmates, like they got like super emotional and they almost like didn't want to put it on the album, but like uh the fact that they did, I think, is really proof of like, yeah, they're fearless, and they're giving it to you like raw and unfiltered. Anti-Curse is a song that's really grown on me with repeated listens. Like Julian gives off just such an amazing like vocal performance, especially during like that drop near the end where the guitars and the drums get a little punchier. And yeah, I love it. And then Letter to an Old Poet, I think, is such a perfect way to cap off this album. Because like it really does feel like it all culminating all the way down to like I, the boy genius nerd, noticing the callbacks to Me and My Dog from the EP on here in terms of like the melody and some of the lyrics on here, and like that moment near the end where she kind of, says how I'm ready to be happy. Like I've been wanting to hear her say that like in music for a while. So yeah, the fact that she's like kind of going out on there, kind of like saying that over top of like some kind of dramatic strings, like it's strings like yeah, it's just and also like the fact that she sort of, the fact that they ended on a like not fully resolved note near the end is like, it's like that, it's like that cliffhanger in a movie or something like that, and it's like, yeah, uh it's a pretty insane way to end things, but yeah, I love this album. I It's oddly one of my most listened to albums in recent memory. Like whether it's been like just playing like one or two songs from it a day, or just like chunks of it, or like I did listen to the whole thing straight through again yesterday just to kind of make sure I was all good on it, and yeah, that is me. And yeah, I'm gonna make a bold statement right now. I think I may like this record more than Punisher. I mean, Punisher is an album I still love, but and there's definitely certain songs on it that, yeah, I think you and I can both agree. There's certain songs of that album that are not quite, beating the stuff on here, but like I but I definitely but like I can't listen to that album sometimes because like it's so like, it's like devastating. I mean, it's like cool to listen to. It's like just a visceral experience.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like in terms of an album, I'll like go back to a lot, in that I don't really have to be in any particular mood for it. Like, um, yeah, this would be it, and I think it's one of the best things they've done. So there you go.
So I think I told Josh most of my complaints when like we'll Facebook message each other and stuff. I know it's a weird complaint, and I'll explain why. My main two complaints with the album, or really it's the main thing, and then there's a side one. It's just the track listing itself. Like I remember I was talking to you about how I might have brought it up. I think one of the main things I felt weird about was the lopsidedness of like, obviously not all of them have to be on every song. My whole complaint is not like, oh, where are all of them on every no, that's not like the complaint. It just felt like what would happen is the way the track listing would roll, like you said, it'd be either like it'd be so dour for so long, and then it would be a main focus of like one of them, and it kind of would feel like there'd be times where it was like another one of their albums, and then suddenly one of them would show up and you're like, oh, okay, no, it's Boy Genius. And I know the weird reason why that's a complaint. It's like, well, if the track listing was just different organized, it'd be good or great. What does that change because if all the songs are still on it? I think just me going through it straight through, it just felt it felt disorganized to me. And again, that's not saying like the album itself is bad because of it. I think it's just me listening to it straight through. That was like my mentality. I really do agree with a lot of what you're saying though about like the songwriting and the way they kind of weave each other's styles and stuff in. I just feel like if it was laid out a little bit, because I think Satanist was one of the first times like I was like, oh, like I kind of woke up. And again, I get it. It's more upbeat and it's like intense. I'm not saying the album has to be like you have to make all these crazy songs, but I felt like it was just so like one thing. And then it just felt like there's this weird disjointedness. So like when that song came on, it was kind of like, holy crap. So I think it was just put out a little different. But again, that's like a weird complaint, but I do share a lot of those sentiments. So that's all I want to say about that.
Next album, I think, is hands down the most like normie pick. Because like I don't know what rock you've been living under if you have not heard a single song from this band at any point, because they're the post-grunge OGs, goddammit. Foo Fighters with But Here We Are. As we all know, last year was a pretty rough year for the Foo Fighters because obviously they lost their longtime drummer, Taylor Hawkins, and then a few months later, Dave Grohl loses his mom. Now, when most bands undergo this much loss in such a short span of time, their first instinct is usually to either take a little break or maybe even spend a little longer on whatever music they're working on just to kind of help themselves kind of process what they're going through. But Dave Grohl is not one to do that. He's definitely not one to let, major trauma like that get in the way of his art, because it's what he's passionate about. Now that I've got that out of the way, let's talk about the actual music, because you and I have agreed about this, that Wasting Light was really the last time this band actually came through with a strong record across the board. And going into this album was weird for me because I hadn't really listened to the singles that much. Mm-hmm. And then a few days before the album comes out, you're messaging me being like, hey, Foo Fighters are dropping on Friday. And I'm like, oh shit. How did I not keep up? What the hell? But thank you for reminding me, because this is hands down the best Foo Fighters album in more than a decade. Rescued is what a great way to kick off this album. It is pretty much peak Foo Fighters all the way. And Dave's vocals on this track, especially in the hook, are so powerful. The way he's I'm just waiting to be rescued. It's so funny to me that in interviews he used to be I'm not a good singer, because I'm listening to this and I'm like, dude, you are not giving yourself enough credit, because there's an intensity to his vocals on here that I don't think we've really seen before on
Teacher. Yeah, Teacher's a good example of that, where that song, obviously that song, you'll probably talk about it a bunch. Yeah. Song is crazy in general, but that song, when I listen to it, Rescued and Under You are you said, you're listening, you're yeah, these are Foo Fighter songs. Yes. You get to the Teacher and you're this doesn't even sound like him. It totally, and it fits because that song is so crazy that it's it fits what they're doing. I agree with that sentiment. I see it.
Yeah. Or even the self-titled track on here is I mean, it is indeed a kind of melodramatic post-grunge ballad, but it reminds me a bit of when Hoobastank would do those kind of huge sounding songs.
Found a reason for me.
Yeah, but the biggest difference is it's not corny at all. yeah, like there is real pain that is being like communicated here, because like Dave's more like kind of screamed vocals on here are like more, so are like they're like blood curdling on this track. I was like, holy shit, I was not ready for this. Like, yeah, and I do think the first half generally, other than hearing voices, which isn't even like a bad song, just given how great those first two songs are, it kind of makes this one just feel a little bit flat in comparison. Yeah, yeah, but then from that point on, the album pretty much picks up. The but like that whole run from track 6 to track 9 is like one of the most insane runs of tracks on a Foo Fighters album. Album for sure. Like nothing at all kind of feels like what Medicine at Midnight tried to be, but like in this case, like it's actually it working in the band's favor, because it's like, it has like a really nice like groove to it, but then like that chorus just slides in, and Dave is just like everything and nothing at all. Like, yeah, it's like I love just how like exasperated he is on this track. Like, yeah, this is one of those records where like even if you're not a Foos fan, if you love music that really makes you feel something in such a visceral way, this album is going to do that to you. Show Me How is like one of the softer tracks on here, but but that may actually be like my favorite song on here. Because like listening to Dave and his daughter Violet like singing together on here, like and the fact that Violet's kind of like carrying the song, because like Dave vocally on this track sounds kind of like weary, like of everything. And like there's even a little moment near the end where they kind of let Violet kind of take lead vocal. Uh but yeah, it's chilling. Um Beyond Me is definitely a little bit more like a ballad that does kind of end as a rocker. Like it reminds me a bit of that Idol song, Beachland Ballroom, where it begins as like this emotional ballad, and then yeah, the second half you get more of the intensity. Obviously, like this is not the same. It like this track doesn't so much feel like, this like crazy like post-punk epic like that song. More like kind of, yeah, just a really great like classic rock ballad in a way. But like, yeah, the teacher, which you already highlighted, is like, yeah, I saw the runtime and I was like, oh boy, how are they going to make this worth it? But they actually made one of their most like, this is like the most ambitious song they've ever recorded. Like, and like, there's actually like, there's like, this is such a rebuttal to like, any like allegations you could make of like them being kind of basic and middle of the road. Cause like, there's like real transitions in here. There's chord changes. There's like real like intensity. Like the final third of that song is like, yeah, is like, wow. Um, Unfortunately, like with the new Young Fathers album, for me, the worst song of the album so happens to be the final track, which I mean, Rest lyrically I love. Like it starts out kind of cool and chilling, but like what is going on with the mix on that second half of the song? It's like About You from the 1975's new album, where there's a good song in there, but it's just, yeah, it's, I guess in a way these two are similar in that it feels like them attempting to do some sort of like shoegaze thing, and I'm like, no, making a shoegaze song does not mean, you know, oh, doesn't mean like make the mix sound like over distorted. You could just make it sound like more serene like that, or like, I mean, like Paranol, like they made a record that admittedly is a little bit overblown, but that album is like
pretty awesome though.
actually like sounds great.
I want to
But
say that was actually a good segue because I want to I want to speak on that. Once again, almost to a T, what you're saying, I definitely agree with. I do have two other issues. One is the mixing thing. Sometimes, now I will say this, when it comes to the emotional stuff of the album, the new stuff they're doing, it definitely trumps the bad stuff. Like, it's definitely, this album still has stuff the Foo Fighters do where it's like, why are you doing this? But the great new stuff and the emotions is still better, and it's there. I think the mixing time and time again can be like why? Like, Dave Grohl seems very big about the way things sound. So I don't get why he was bringing in the producer for Medicine for Midnight or To Midnight
or Concrete and Gold.
Or Concrete and Gold. Like, it's weird to me that, like, he seems very like, you know, yeah, it's gonna sound, you know. So I feel like that's strange. Some songs it works fine. I think Rescued kind of sounds like that, but I think the song is still decent. But like, the other problem I have is clearly this album is emotional. Now, obviously, when you make an album, you have every right to make it your own thing. Like, are you going to try to make it stripped back? Do you want it to, you know, Foo Fighters are known for good rock songs, big anthemic stuff, right? Great riffs. This album is trying to be both, right? It's trying to be a rockin' album, it's trying to be an emotional album. That's not my issue. My issue is I think sometimes those don't work together. Like you said, sometimes like they do stuff where it comes across a certain way, generic, whatever. There's definitely times on this album where I'm kind of like, I don't know if you needed to do that, or like, that didn't seem like it. Like, Rescued is a good example where I like the song, but there's certain things where I'm like, oh, that's a good rock. Okay, that lyric.
Oh yeah.
Like, Under You, I think is actually the best, besides like The Teacher and stuff. When it comes to just a normal, simple song you hear on the radio, I think Under You is probably one of the best ones because it's rockin', it has great lyrics, and it actually is like the emotion to it, and him, you know, what he's singing about and the way he's singing it. I love it. And the sound of it too. It doesn't sound like super amazing. I think the production's still a little like, why are we making it sound
Oh
like
man, like,
but
I
still
kind of
love
hear
the
you.
song.
This album is like, yeah. Compression, like,
Yeah.
the whole time for sure.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to speak on that because I agree with you. I think the ending is, they kind of were going for a really beautiful ending, and they should have just left it minimal. Like, I think they should have let it be what it is, because
If they let it just be like maybe an acoustic ballad, I'd be like, yeah.
that'd been nice. We talk about, you know, putting out albums, and probably the most eclectic band, which is the real reason why I've not listened to this
Oh
record.
yeah, and
I'm
they
kind
put
of
out so much
interested.
music
I'm
too.
kind of interested in you convincing me to listen to it, because I don't know if I'm ready, because I think it's too much to
Oh
get
yeah,
into,
because
but I'm interested.
oh yeah, of course I'm talking about Australia's King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, with, oh my god. Oh,
Come on.
we're looking at a long ass
Super
album
long.
title here.
Just say the first part. You can
Yeah,
read the whole thing, but they'll know.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, diehard fans in the know. Yeah, yeah. Don't need the whole thing. So yeah, I'm just gonna shorten it the way Fantano did. Petrodragonic Apocalypse. Um. So King Gizzard, as you said, very eclectic group, and you know, they've done. I mean, at their core, they're a psychedelic rock band, but like they they've done jazz, they've done progressive rock. They have like their one little like kind of acoustic album. They also have done like some album. They have one album that has more of a boogie flair to it. Another that has like kind of a Animal Collective esque dream pop direction to it. But in the case of this album, yeah, like they're not fucking around. They're giving you some in your face, throttling, and somewhat political kind of a thrash metal, which Infest the Rat's Nest was like the last album they made like this. Um, but like this album definitely is pretty much that turned up to 11 because like because of like the savage performances, the riffs on these tracks are great. Like the riff that opens up Motor Spirit, like right from the gate. I went into this album kind of not really expecting to be so blown away, I but then I turned this on. And I was like, yes. And yes, Supercell, I also really love a lot. It's like a slightly catchier song, but just like the energy to it, and like also like those group vocals, like the Supercell, Supercell. Like it's kind of like obnoxious, but in a good way. Converge, I think, has some really cool like switch ups throughout its runtime. And then like Witchcraft is like kind of interesting because like it reminds me, it feels a little more like kind of familiar territory for them. Like it reminds me a lot of, say, Nonagon Infinity. Yeah, I would say if you're only if you're if you want to get into King Gizzard, that would be the album I would start with personally. I mean, not saying you have to do it, but like it was my intro to the band, and like right from there I was a fan. Um but yeah, this song does a good job being like kind of that, but also like um so like kind of it works well in the context of this album. And then there's Gila Monster, which I think perfectly captures like how this album, even though it is intense, it's also kind of campy and over the top at points. Because like yeah, because there's like a vocal performance on this track that's like, I'm the yellow blood spiller witch killer, killer. Like yeah, it's crazy. Dragon, I do think, yeah, is the one song in here that I don't need it to be like almost 10 minutes because like I mean it starts out really cool, but like halfway through I'm like I kind of get what this song is doing. Like I yeah, it's and it just ends up sounding a bit like heavy-handed, but the other kind of 9-minute song on here, Flamethrower, which is the end to the record, that one's good. Like just just the riffs on it and just like the way that lyrically it kind of ends the album, and like there's even a transition into a more like kind of progressive electronic kind of section, and like yeah, it's like it pans out like better than you would expect, like, and it's kind of, I love how this album at certain points like kind of feels as though you're like, it feels as though the apocalypse is happening while you're listening to it. And like I mean they've definitely been making music about the apocalypse like forever, but it just seems to be at its most kind of unhinged on this album. Like I'm thinking of like, I mean, one of their albums is called Murder of the Universe. And and it's kind of cool to me that they're making an album like this because like before 2019 they had songs that had like kind of metal elements to them, but then with Infest the Rat's Nest they were like, okay, I mean, we're following up our kind of lighthearted kind of environmentalist boogie rock album, but no bullshit, we're gonna make a metal album now. uh and like yeah, I love this record, and dare I say it, it may even be my favorite King Gizzard album. It's like I mean, even the albums of theirs that I love have maybe at least like one or two like kind of skips for me, but this album outside of maybe parts of one of them is like, yeah, I think it's pretty strong across the board. So there you go. Those are my three albums.
I will say, when I was getting the things that I put in the video, when I saw the cover of it, I was like, "Ooh, maybe this might be one I listen to." And you saying what you're saying kind of matches what the cover is, so I might get into it. I think it's just that weird deep dive of me feeling like, if I listen to this, do I have to
Oh yeah, because like
go
I mean,
back?
in 2017 alone, they put out like 5 albums that had their own like kind of sound to them. But and it hasn't stopped. Like yeah, and I've listened to pretty much every album they've done since Nodding on Infinity. So there you go.
I started by saying, how I've been the last like month or so. I still feel like these are not just, oh, I'm putting a list together for, no, these are 3 albums I've been listening to. I'm going to go in order of how much I want to talk about them, because the first album, I don't have so much to say because I feel like it's easy to just kind of set the stage, have people listen to it. Second album and third album, I'll have a little more to say. I'll start with the newest entry, which is one that I suggested to Josh to listen to, which was kind of the one that was different, of like, hey, I'm listening to this, you should go listen to this. So it is Military Gun, and the album is Life Under the Gun. This band I saw open for Touche Amore actually last year, and I really enjoyed them. I wasn't a huge fan of the other openers because they definitely were that kind of like screamo, like breakdown, like dun 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 dun. Dun. I'm like, I can't. I'm sorry. It's not my thing. But they were like poppy, and like it reminded me of Touche Amore, and I was like, oh, these guys are dope. And so then I saw this album came out, and I remembered the name, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm stupid. I haven't gone to like listen to them. This is going to be perfect. It's 27 minutes or so, and I feel like I've been seeing a lot of reviews of it, and a lot of people have been kind of saying like a certain underwhelming nature of it. I could see why, but for an album that is this short and the kind of energy that it has and the vibe it has, I really loved it. It's short to the point. I think songwriting wise, it's not doing anything that is so overly complicated. It sort of hits you in the face, like the opening track on here, Do It Faster. Dun 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 dun. Like it builds to this epic like chorus. I thought that was a great song, very high, then kind of boom, boom, ba-da-ba-dum, ba-da-ba-dum, ba-ba-bum. It gets things going. My Friends Are Having a Hard Time is a fun jam. Return Policy, Seizure of Assets. Like the fact that the songs are just kind of these hardcore riffs, these great drums. We get like a weird kind of sappier, like near ending song with See You Around, with kind of, it's like weird and twee and like woo woo woo, I see you around. Like it's just kind of infectious, and the vibes are there, and I just love the energy. It's definitely one of those albums that you just can kind of play through, and again, it brings you through all of these emotions and sounds, and I think it's a great album. I think it's fun, and it definitely has some emotional moments. Pretty fun, pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, oh yeah, I of course went and listened to this album myself, and yeah, I definitely was like, yeah, I was definitely more like, yeah, this is pretty good. Yeah, I can't say I like love it per se, and I do think it is like definitely a little bit one note, musically, but like, but one thing that I did like about this was, uh, they kind of sound like, in a way, like if Turnstile were less of a hardcore band and
Mm-hmm.
more like an emo band,
Yep.
this is probably what they would sound like, because the vocals remind me a lot of Turnstile, and obviously, it's funny. I'm a little bit lukewarm on this album, and I'm comparing it to Turnstile because like I love Turnstile, and like they have my favorite rock album of the decade. Pretty solid so far.
I think in
But
this
like
album is definitely rough around the edges though too. And I think what excites me is, I think just the energy of this album is better than what the actual album is. But
Yep.
if this is where they're beginning, I know they put out songs and stuff before this, but if this is kind of where they're starting and like where they're at, I could see them becoming awesome, because I think the energy and the like the emotional stuff is there. It's just now let's round it off a little bit, clean it up a bit, and still keep that energy, because I could see that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, I think that's a great album. And I definitely see the Turnstile stuff. It's not an album that I hated when I first listened to it, but it's definitely an album that's grown on me. And it's an artist that we all know he is something. He is something. You're gonna feel something from his records, whether you love him, whether you hate him. And that is the secretive rapper, the shadow, he's so elusive. Billy Woods, but it's not just Billy Woods, it's also Kenny Siegel with their second album together. This is Maps.
Yes.
This is not their last album. It is by far the most interesting, I think, that he's done. It's kind of the closest thing. Now, obviously, I know a lot of people are probably going to barf when I say this, but I'm not saying it's like a comparison that's so one-to-one. It's kind of his poppiest rap album. Like,
I agree with you. Maybe not so much with it being like poppy, but just like, yeah, this is his most like accessible and direct album.
It's accessible. I think he's
and it's most critically acclaimed too. Yeah. Look at that.
Yeah, like I think the sounds on here, like I mean, obviously when FaceTime first came out, the boom, boom, and I'm like, what? And then Sam of Future Islands comes on the hook, and you're kind of just like, this is so, which he killed it. Killed it. It's soulful, it's groovy, and I'm like, now granted, Billy Woods, like, not all of his stuff is just like weird dark shit, and it's him like, it's the 3rd of June, I don't know what's going on right now. It's not like, that's not all his stuff, but it was just like,
me on those song. Drinks.
Like, just hearing that song, I was like, oh, is this going to be the album? And now granted, there are songs on here that are definitely darker and like more weird and experimental, but the album's like jazzy, and it's like there's a lot of like really cool like structures to the songs. Again, there's more of an upbeatness to it that I think Billy Woods himself kind of like, it's shocking to me how he rides all these beats. There's some of the catchiest stuff on here. I'm so mad I can't think of the song. It might be the song with Quale Chris, where he's like, every show I forget the lyric. I have that stuck in my head. Like, it's like when Death Grips makes an album that's like one of their catchiest. It's like, how can you
like Bottomless Pit or something?
Yeah, it's like, how can you listen to their shit and then be like, like, you don't. Those aren't,
like a song like It comes to mind or something.
Yeah. Like, this album has many songs that I'm like, I just feel like are so not, I don't want to say fun to listen to, but they have good vibes. Year Zero, where I think Danny Brown, I know we got Scaring the Hoes, which was great. We need an album, because he killed his verse. The energy on it is great. Again, I think the concept of it is really cool. I love the way that it flows. Again, I say it's dark. It definitely ends darker, like NYC Tap Water, which, like, the title of fucking some of these songs is so funny too. I think As the Crow Flies is a dark, fantastic way to end it. Aesop Rock shows up, has a great verse. I think Rapper Weed is a great song. I love the way he's breaking that all down as well. This album is just unique, and the concept's interesting. And again, like, it's super cool to see an album that's a little more upbeat. But again, it's not upbeat in a way where it's like you're listening to like a Drake album, or like a little bit like, it's not a pop rap album, but it's more upbeat for him. And he's still like fucking killing it. And the reason why it's funny is, if it was anyone else, I'd be like, okay, like, this is a different sound for him. Kenny Siegel, they did Hiding Places. Hiding Places is like one of his weirdest, darkest albums. And then this is the other project he does for him. It's just so weird. but it's grown on me a lot because I think it sticks in my head more. And then when I listen to it fully through, I'm like, there's a concept. Like you said, there's things like Billy Woods I love, but he's one of those rappers where I think I love him more just from the him approaching stuff. Some of his lyrics I get, but I just sit there going, I don't know what the hell you're talking about half the time. I actually got a lot more this time. So yeah, this album's great. And it's odd and it's bizarre, but it definitely, as time's gone on, I'm like, this is pretty great. And it's cool to see him doing this. And I'm pretty sure, I think he has another album coming out this year. It's going back to King Gizzard.
Or like Arm and Hammer. I think I think it's an
Oh,
Arm and
yes.
Hammer record.
I think it's Arm and Hammer, not Billy Woods. It's Arm and Hammer. But it's like, it's the same thing where he's super eclectic and it's like, you don't know what you're going to get. Like, honestly, up until this point, since I've been getting into him, I know you agree with me. Church is probably the one album where we're like, okay, yeah, this kind of wasn't that great. But other than maybe, I know I didn't like the last Arm and Hammer record. That's the one with the guy in NYC and the tigers in the window. That album wasn't for me. But other than that, he's taken me on a weird journey and I'm here for it. And I really dig it. So.
Oh yeah. This album is yeah. Yeah, and there's kind of an interesting flow to this record in that there's like, you know, there's certain parts of it where you'll get all these like kind of really short songs you know, like after Rapper Weed we get like Blue Smoke, and then like Bad Dreams Are Only Dreams is like and then Babylon by Bus, which that song, that one's dope. Like because just the beat on here, boom, 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 and he's just like, yeah, Black Swamp with the bubble butt, and then like the key change, and then Shrapnel comes in and just kills it, and then there's the final verse with those like big string samples, and he's like just straight up like just going off. And then year zero after that, like the flow of this album, I mean, like Rolling Stone of all places is like, you know, covering Billy Woods now, like that's pretty insane right there. But
It's nice to see more eyes on him. Like, it's cool. And, you know, it's going to be cool that he's still not going to change. You know, he's going to do what he wants and give us that weird rap. And again, over this kind of production or something darker, you know. But a band that I had a revelation with this song, with this album being on here, where like, I don't know what it is about like post-punk, post-rock, but I just really like it. It's super interesting. And there's so many different things you could do with it. And this was a band that everyone freaked out about. Their first album, I really enjoyed. I didn't love it. And this album, I think, is better. And I was pretty excited for it because I really liked what they could do. And, you know, we go through every single one of these kind of artists, right? We go to a Black Midi, Black Country New Road, you know, the list.
Shame.
Yeah. We can go on and on about the kinds of styles, right? Oh, Monolith by Squid. This album is pretty fucking nuts. Like,
oh my god,
it's
like I saw Anthony didn't include this in like his favorite album so far, like this and Jesse Ware, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing, dude?
This album is, I think the reason why the first record I didn't love like that is I think a lot of times when, like, it was kind of like the Black Country record where I really liked it. My problem was I feel like when I would then hear their second album, I'm like, oh, this feels more memorable. And like, there's moments that like, even if I can't go back to it all the time, because maybe there's like, because that second Black Country New Road album is great, but it's hefty and there's a lot going on. But this record is shorter than their first record. And it feels like kind of when Black Midi went for the more like, their first album was kind of like chaotic, but it was definitely just like this really big piece of work. And then their second album, they're like, let's just fucking go wild. Like, actually wild. And like
this album definitely reminds me of that second Black Midi album in terms of like, I mean, like the pacing of it definitely reminds me of that, where yeah, there's like kind of more kind of like mysterious sort of pretty moments, and then the moments where they just go off are like just
and they're
like
more
so
shocking
intense.
on this album because like so Swing in a Dream starts the album and it's a great song. Like it's very honestly, it's probably their most straightforward song on the album. Like it just feels like a great, yeah, it's a great rock tune. It's catchy. Then we get to Devil's Den, which you were saying how it kind of builds in these crazy moments. This song, it kind of starts and you're sitting there and it's like lurking and it's building. And then like in the second half, it gets crazy and you're like, oh my God, what is happening? And then Siphon Song, which seems to kind of be one of the more general, like this is probably the weak part of the album. I don't think it's weak because again, it's one of those, it's not a bad song. It's more of, I just think maybe it's a placement issue. It just was a song that didn't really do so much for me. And I think it coming off of Devil's Den, I was like, but I think really other than that song, this album is great. And then
yeah,
we get
I will say,
yes.
I will say, like, yeah, Siphon Song, like, I will say, even though I do agree with you that it is like weakest song on the album, like, there's actually, I think I may still love it a little more than you because, like, I mean, who else is combining those like kind of heavily processed vocals and like these like weird post-punk riffs with these like these little like opera backing vocals, like yeah, they're doing some strange combos of sounds on here,
and especially vocally. So like going to Undergrowth, the weird like and it's like I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like it's so like weird in the way, like it's you're kind of bobbing and it's fun, but it's kind of nuts and you're like, this is not something that you're like bobbing for fun. You're just, it's catchy, but it's so out there. And then we get to the Blades, which is definitely one of my favorite tracks on the album. I think it's great. I think the intensity on it is great and the vocals are great. And then we get to After the Flash, which is like one of the more menacing and slower songs, and the way it builds and builds and builds, and it's just, it feels so dense and it feels like it's ready to just explode, like it's wild. Greenlight, I think, is a fantastic song. I think Greenlight kind of incorporates a lot of what the first song did, where it has some great catchy grooves and it does this kind of post-rock, post-punk stuff really well. And then we get to this, I have to say, because it's a great song name. If you had seen the Bulls' swimming attempts, you would have stayed away, which is the song on this album, which I think is a great way to end the album because it definitely kind of mixes a lot of what they did so well on here, where it is these kind of builds that you don't know where they're going and then how big they go. And then again, just the experimentation on it, I think is fantastic. And there's kind of a really well put together ending for the album, but it's just something where like, I think about their first record and I really do enjoy it. This record just seems more off the wall and like, they're just like, we're going to take chances. And
in an odd way, I kind of get the impression this is getting a slightly cooler reception than that debut, maybe in some places.
I agree, because I think their debut people like freaked out about, and this album, I'm like, this feels more like more intense, more interesting. I think the chances they're taking. The reason why I didn't love the first record is I went into it and I was definitely excited because this is a revelation where I'm like, oh, this just seems to be a genre of music I really like because it's interesting. And that first record, the first Black Midi record, was not for me, but it wasn't because I thought it was boring. It was odd, but it just never captured me. Squid's first record, I thought was really solid, but I kind of came away with it like, yeah, like this is good. Like it's a post-rock record, right? Like it does those things. I feel like on here, they're definitely doing that, but they're like, we actually want to put out something that's very weird and provocative and interesting. And like you said, like even with the song, with Siphon's song, the fact that even on there, they're still kind of diving into things that are interesting and weird. And I think, you know, it kind of just depends on how I feel about whatever is going on with the music. Because Black Midi, again, it was very different because that second record just felt more like layered, and there's so much more going on that I was more into. Black Country, that second album just feels like they took the first album and just tripled it in terms of experimentation, songwriting, just emotions. Like that second record, like that first record feels like nothing compared to their second record. And their first record is still pretty solid. This record is not that. This record is not, wow, this feels so, it feels kind of less, but it feels like more because of how much more is going on here. And yeah, I really enjoy it. And again, it's definitely one of those records that I go back to for a record that shouldn't really be accessible. And like with Maps is very different because it clearly felt like Billy Woods wanted to go over a certain kind of production and he just worked. This feels like an experimental album that somehow is catchy. And you're just like, how does this work? Like it shouldn't, but it does. Are any of these albums yours that you love? Leave them in the comments below if they're not, or if they are. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out Josh's channel. He did just put out his favorite album so far of the year. I watched it. It was great. And so you'll get some insight into some other albums that maybe he didn't talk about.
Yeah. And there's at least 2 other albums that really got higher up for me since I did that video. Because, like, I mean, there's plenty of other albums we could have talked about. Because, like, I mean, like, you know, the Geese record was really fantastic. McKinley Dixon, I thought was so far like my favorite rap album of the year. And you know, an album that originally did not grab me all that much that now I love is the new Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit album too. Really, you know, that's about all I could really suggest right now. And I know you also are, you know, fucking with, like, you know, like the new, that Kara Jackson album or something like that. Yeah,
that's a great record. She would have been on here. Like, I definitely agree with you. It was kind of just like,
and Jesse Ware, like that's like the best pop album of the year, so it's kind of odd we don't have it on either of our lists this time.
Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for having patience. I'm sorry that this is late. My ears suck, but they're back now. So thank you, Josh, as always. We'll see y'all in September, the end of September. Yeah. And then we'll have more albums to talk about. So until then, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for tuning in to Channel BK. Peace out.
All right. Nice.